News in our next hour as well. Some very interesting figures from the TV ratings last night that I'll share with you a little later as well. It's 11 minutes to 11. Back into your calls soon too on 1332. But our education analyst from Fruition Tuition, Asksherrin, who's been on our program for some years now, has a brand new book out. Good to see you, Asksherrin.
Thank you, Greg. It's good to be here.
There's been a lot of love and passion got into this book. You are not raising children, you are raising adults, and some fellow from 4BC's written on the front. It's a must-have, profound, yet easy to read.
Well, I reckon that fellow's pretty profound himself.
I was delighted to write it because it's a wonderful little book. What motivated the book?
I just really want to support parents, be intentional about parenting and help them set good goals for their children and be able to fulfill on those goals. I think parents instinctively know what they want, and I've just asked a few questions to help shape them and maybe give them some encouragement.
That's an interesting word. I've never heard that before. Be intentional about it.
Yeah, like don't just let things happen and see what comes of it, but actually think about what kind of adult would I like my child to become. If you're looking for a self-sufficient, organised person when they're 20 who can go to work on time and pack their own lunch and drive themselves there or catch a bus or a train and turn up to work regularly, what things do you need to put in place when they're little so they can be that person when they're older? It's that kind of, and that's intentional. That doesn't just happen. You've got to work towards that.
Well, that's interesting. We'll get to how you do work towards that in just a moment. But when we talk about so many of the problems around the place at the moment, do you think that's a direct result of no intentionality or?
And of being unsure and having some doubt and being just unsure with pressures of work and lack of time in the home. We've lost our way sometimes, and I think parents have their children's best interests at heart almost always, and I just think that we don't have that sit down around the family dinner table on a Sunday for a Sunday roast where you could talk to grandma and granddad and have much more influence from the bigger family, so parents are often isolated.
Give us an example, a practical example of what you're talking about in that area, of that intentionality. So you want your child or your teenager to be a certain way.
Yes.
One or two examples of how you might then approach things when they're much younger to get that result.
All right. Let's say we want our children to be good communicators. We need to work out what we have to do to communicate well. We need to give good eye contact.
Sharon's daughter is sitting here with us today. It's lovely to see her.
Yeah, hi Jay.
And they're looking at each other all the time.
I know, and she's going in.
Is she good at this, by the way?
Fine.
She is. She's very good at all this stuff. Mum's good at all this stuff.
Yeah. Jay likes being in the background.
Okay.
But if you are wanting to raise an adult who is a good communicator, what are the things that you have to teach your children when they're little? To have good eye contact, to use a person's name, to know how to shake hands. These are the things you practice when they're little, so that when they're older, they'll naturally shake someone's hand and say g'day properly. And it is something that Jay's been kind of forced to do always. And all of the children now know how to say g'day to people.
What about in terms of education, the area you've been a specialist at for years and years in schools, deputy principal and things like that? How does what you're talking about apply to that? How have you addressed that in your book?
Well, it's interesting. To produce a well-balanced adult and a well-rounded, successful student in a classroom, they're often really similar things. So if you want to develop an independent thinker, someone who does their homework on time, asks questions, is respectful in class of other people's ideas, contributes to the group, there are things that you do at home that actually develop those skills in the child so they'll be a good classroom learner. Being organised is an amazing advantage. If you come from a home where your books are together, you've packed your lunch, you're on time, you've got your hat, you will come into the classroom ready to learn. It's a distinct advantage that you can put your child at in a classroom.
And you actually have practical examples in here, and there's some work involved. If you want, as you read the book, you can write down little goals and things that you both do to achieve those goals.
It's almost like a journal. I've tried to ask people questions so that they can write down what they're hoping for, and then they can work through that with their child and with their family. And it's like a point of discussion. If there is a mum and dad in the home, they can have a united approach. If mum and dad are separated or divorced, or it's a single mum, it can be a different way that the book can be used.
Okay, you've got a section here at the back going along those lines. Discipline plan.
Yes.
Behaviours, attitudes, etc. So child's displaying bad discipline either at home or at school or whatever. What do you then do about that?
you identify what you're trying to achieve. You look at the way to praise good behaviour. You look at the way to penalise poor behaviour and the consequences for poor behaviour. The most important thing is to be consistent. So if you write down what your approach is going to be before the blow-up, before the thing goes wrong, you'll be much more in control, calm, and not too emotional, overreacting or underreacting, or you know how we change our mind halfway? Because we haven't worked out what we're trying to do before it happens, we're just spontaneously responding, and that's not so good for a child.
No, so as child and as parent, you're working towards those ends, those goals together.
What kind of adult do you want your child to be?
It's very good. That's what the book is. You are not raising children, you are raising adults. It's Sharon Guggenberger's book, co-founder of Fruition Tuition, and Sharon needs your help because 25% of the royalties from this book, and the book's not going to be expensive, it's a terrific little book, and we'll tell you more about that in the next week or so when it becomes widely available, but 25% you're going to be giving
to a
charity. Now, we'd like your nominations for that charity. We'll come back after the news, so if you're involved in a charity or know a good charity, we'll take a few suggestions on air, then talk some more about it. 13 13 32 it is.